The Young and the Restless Spoilers shock. The latest revelations from The Young and the Restless suggest something that longtime viewers may have forgotten. Jill Abbott may not be the villain she's been painted to be. For decades, Jill has been both admired and despised in equal measure, a woman driven by ambition, scarred by love, and shaped by the never-ending wars of Genoa City's elite. Yet behind every accusation of manipulation and betrayal, there has always been a complex story, one of survival, loneliness, and the eternal struggle to hold on to what was built through blood and compromise. Now, with the chaos surrounding Kane Ashby's return and Victor Newman's renewed dominance, Jill finds herself once again at the center of a battle that is less about business and more about legacy. And for the first time in years, it seems her motives may not be as dark as her rivals believe. It began, as so many things do in Genoa City, with fear disguised as strategy. Jill Abbott, weakened by health issues and burdened by her son Billy's erratic behavior, made the unthinkable decision: she sold Chancellor Industries to Victor Newman. It wasn't out of greed, though some whispered that it was. It wasn't revenge, though the ghosts of her past might have driven her toward it. No, it was desperation, the quiet realization that her body was failing her faster than her will could keep up. She had watched Billy spiral, torn between addiction and self-destruction, incapable of steering the ship she had fought so long to keep afloat. Chancellor was more than a company, it was her life's work, her proof that she was more than Catherine Chancellor's rival, more than the girl from the wrong side of the tracks who clawed her way into high society. And the thought of watching it crumble in the hands of her son broke her in ways that power never could. Selling to Victor seemed logical, even merciful. After all, Victor was a master of control. For all his ruthlessness, he had the stability that Billy lacked. To Jill, it was less a betrayal than a surrender to inevitability, a mother's final act of protection disguised as a business deal. She told herself it was temporary, that one day she might return to reclaim what was hers once her health improved. But life in Genoa City rarely allows for such easy reversals. Once Victor Newman has his hands on something, he rarely lets go. Jill's decision rippled through the city like a scandal wrapped in sympathy. Some accused her of weakness, others of selling out. Yet beneath the public perception, something more complicated was brewing. Nicky Newman, always poised between loyalty to Victor and compassion for those he crushes along the way, began to question Jill's motives. Their meeting at the Chancellor estate on October 7th was supposed to be cordial, two women of shared history, discussing leadership and legacy. But as soon as Kane Ashby's name surfaced, civility evaporated like mist under sunlight. Nicky's suspicion sharpened into hostility, while Jill's defensiveness exposed the cracks in her own certainty. It wasn't just business between them, it was personal. Jill has always had a complicated relationship with men like Kane, ambitious, wounded, manipulative, but underneath it all, deeply human. She saw in him a reflection of her younger self, someone constantly underestimated, always fighting to prove worth to a world that refused to see past mistakes. To everyone else, Kane was a dangerous opportunist trying to reclaim control of Chancellor Industries. To Jill, he was the only one bold enough to challenge Victor's growing monopoly, the only one willing to take risks for the company she still secretly loved. And so she defended him, even when every instinct told her not to. Nicky, however, saw things differently. Having lived for decades in Victor's shadow, she recognized manipulation when she saw it. To her, Kane wasn't a savior but a symptom. Another man intoxicated by power, using charm and half-truths to lure vulnerable women and fractured families into his schemes. She tried to warn Jill, insisting that Kane's ambition wasn't driven by loyalty but by ego. Yet Jill, tired of being told what to do by those who considered themselves morally superior, pushed back. Her voice, though weakened by illness, carried the defiance of a woman who refused to be patronized. She argued that Victor was no better, that his methods, cloaked in the language of responsibility, were just as manipulative, just as self-serving. The argument between Jill and Nicky became a symbolic clash, not merely between two women, but between two ideologies. Nicky believed in control through order, Jill believed in freedom through chaos. Nikki valued loyalty to the powerful, Jill valued loyalty to those still struggling. In that sense, Kane represented both danger and redemption, a chance for Jill to align herself once again with the unpredictable, to remind herself that she was not dead yet, that she still had choices to make and wars to fight. And though she wouldn't admit it out loud, she saw in Kane's rebellion against Victor something thrillingly familiar, the same audacity that once made her both hated and irresistible. Still, Jill's admiration for Kane may prove her undoing. Because if there's one constant in Genoa City, it's that alliances built on emotion rarely survive the weight of ambition. Victor's influence extends far beyond Chancellor's boardroom, and his ability to manipulate perception is unmatched. He knew Jill's vulnerabilities before she even sat down with Nikki that day. By the time their conversation turned heated, he had already begun the next phase of his plan, using Kane as bait. The genius of Victor Newman lies not in brute force but in orchestration. He understood that by allowing Kane to court Jill's loyalty, he could expose both of their weaknesses. Once Kane made his move, Victor could crush them both, reclaiming moral authority while expanding his empire even further. In the days following the meeting, whispers began circulating that Kane had approached Jill with an offer to help him regain control of Chancellor Industries for her own good. He painted it as a restoration, a symbolic gesture to honor her legacy. But everyone in Genoa City knows Kane never acts without an ulterior motive. Was it a genuine attempt to free Jill from Victor's grip, or just another manipulation in his ongoing quest for dominance? The answer, as always, depends on who's telling the story. To Victor, Kane is a pest, a nuisance to be swatted down. To Nikki, he's a threat, not only to business stability but to moral order. But to Jill, he might still be a misguided son in need of direction. And that's the tragedy of Jill Abbott, she never stops believing she can fix broken men. She's done it her whole life, with Philip, with John, with Colin, even with Billy. Every time she tries to save someone, she loses a part of herself in the process. And yet, she keeps trying, perhaps because saving others distracts her from the one person she can't save, herself. Supporting Kane, even now, feels like redemption for all her past failures. If she can bring him back from the edge, maybe she can prove that compassion isn't weakness after all. But compassion, in the world of the young and the restless, is a dangerous currency. It costs everything and pays nothing. Victor, for his part, seems content to play the long game. By letting Jill waver, he deepens her dependence. By letting Kane make his pitch, he exposes Jill's lingering emotional attachments. He knows that once the truth about Kane's latest scheme surfaces, and it always does, Jill will be humiliated, discredited, and left with nowhere to turn but back to him. It's a cruel but effective strategy. Nikki, ever the loyal wife, will likely defend Victor's decision, arguing that he's protecting Jill from herself. But deep down, Nikki's conscience will not rest easy. She knows the pain of being manipulated in the name of care. She's lived it, survived it, and carries the scars to prove it. Watching Jill fall into that same trap might stir more guilt than satisfaction. Still, the story's emotional heartbeat lies not in the power struggle but in the quiet moments, Jill sitting alone at Chancellor's portrait gallery, looking up at Catherine's painting and wondering if she's betrayed her old rival's memory. In her heart, she knows Catherine would have fought to the last breath before selling Chancellor to Victor. Yet Jill also knows that Catherine would understand fear, the kind that creeps in when your body betrays you and time no longer feels like an ally. It's that duality that makes Jill Abbott so fascinating. She's not evil, she's human. Her mistakes are the price of her survival. Whether Kane's offer is sincere or manipulative remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, Jill is standing at a crossroads where every choice leads to loss. If she trusts Kane, she risks being dragged into his spiral of deceit. If she sides with Victor, she becomes complicit in the very tyranny she's fought against all her life. And if she listens to Nikki, she must confront the possibility that her days as a power player are truly over. None of those outcomes sit easily with a woman like Jill Abbott, who built her identity on defiance. In the end, Perhaps the truth isn't that Jill is good or bad, hero or villain, saint or sinner. Perhaps she is all of them at once, a survivor navigating a world that has never forgiven her for being unapologetically herself. The whispers about her being manipulative or selfish have always come from those who feared her strength. And maybe, deep down, that's what still unsettles Victor and Nikki most. The knowledge that even when cornered, Jill Abbott still finds a way to matter. So as Kane continues his dangerous dance of persuasion, and Victor tightens his grip on Chancellor Industries, one question lingers like perfume in an empty boardroom: is Jill truly being deceived, or is she simply biding her time for one last move? In Genoa City, power never stays still for long. And if history has taught us anything, it's that Jill Abbott has a way of turning every loss into the beginning of her next victory, no matter who underestimates her. The balance of power in Genoa City is shifting once again, and this time it's not in the hands of the Newmans or the Abbotts, it's in the hands of Jill Abbott and her ever-turbulent connection to Kane Ashby. As Victor Newman quietly watches the corporate chessboard with his trademark calm, the pieces are beginning to move in ways even he didn't anticipate. By the end of the week, Jill and Lily will find themselves face to face with the man they once trusted, once forgave, and now must finally confront. Victor may have thought he was orchestrating the perfect trap by exploiting Jill's emotional weakness, but what he doesn't realize is that Kane has already turned the game on its head. Kane knows Jill's heart as well as her flaws. He understands that beneath her sharp wit and corporate armor lies a woman who still longs to be needed, to feel indispensable, to hold on to something familiar in a world that constantly replaces her. That weakness, combined with her nostalgic devotion to Chancellor Industries, is the lever he intends to pull until the entire foundation of Chancellor's leadership bends to his will. It's easy to see how Jill might fall for it again. For years, she has carried a soft spot for Kane, forged in the strange alchemy of shared history and misplaced trust. Catherine Chancellor saw something special in him, and Jill, ever eager to honor Catherine's memory, allowed herself to believe that Catherine's faith was proof enough of Kane's worth. When Kane looks Jill in the eyes and insists that all he wants is to bring Chancellor home to Catherine's legacy, he strikes the deepest chord in her soul. He plays to her guilt, her sentiment, her longing to believe that someone, anyone, still sees Chancellor as more than a corporate trophy. Kane has perfected the art of mixing truth with illusion. He tells her what she already wants to believe, that he can lead Chancellor with honor, that his motives are pure, that he wants to protect what Catherine built from outsiders like Victor who treat it as another prize in their endless power games. And Jill, desperate to see herself as the guardian of that legacy rather than its betrayer, listens. But this time, Kane's manipulation doesn't stop at flattery, it extends into strategy. He begins positioning Jill as his inside connection, a bridge between Chancellor and both the Newman and Abbott families. Outwardly, he paints it as a diplomatic gesture, a way to stabilize the volatile corporate landscape. In reality, it's a carefully constructed deception. Kane knows Victor's empire thrives on control and secrecy. By encouraging Jill to work with both families, he ensures she becomes the perfect spy, gathering intelligence from two rival houses without even realizing she's serving his interests. To Kane, Jill's name and reputation are tools, a familiar banner to hide his deeper ambitions. If anyone questions his motives, he can simply point to Jill's involvement and claim legitimacy. After all, who would suspect treachery when Chancellor's matriarch herself endorses him? Meanwhile, Lily Winters begins to see through the fog of nostalgia that blinds both Jill and others around them. Lily has known Kane's patterns for too long. She's seen the charm, the remorse, the reinvention. Always followed by another lie. While Jill defends him, Lily observes. She listens to his words, measures his tone, and recognizes the same cadence he used years ago when he swore he would change. Lily's confrontation with Kane is not born of anger but of exhaustion. She's tired of watching him reappear in cycles of redemption and betrayal, each time leaving emotional wreckage behind. This time, however, she's not alone. Jill, though resistant, begins to sense that Lily's instincts may be right. When Kane starts hinting at temporary transfers of authority and joint oversight of assets, the echoes of past deception ring too loudly to ignore. Victor Newman, ever the strategist, watches this storm with both satisfaction and apprehension. He has always understood the power of weakness, especially emotional weakness, and he thought he could use Jill's attachment to Kane to divide his opponents. But he underestimated just how dangerous Kane can be when given room to maneuver. What began as a plan to control Chancellor through Jill's cooperation has now evolved into a risk Victor cannot fully contain. Kane is not the naive outsider he once was. He has learned from every defeat, every humiliation. Over the last 6 years, while others dismissed him, he rebuilt his confidence, refined his tactics, and studied the people who destroyed him. Now he's back with a clearer understanding of how power truly works in Genoa City, not through loyalty, but through leverage. And leverage is exactly what he holds over Jill. Somewhere in the shadows, Kane has gathered information, perhaps a document, perhaps a personal confession, that gives him quiet control over her. He doesn't need to blackmail her directly, the mere implication of exposure keeps her compliant. Maybe it's something about the sale to Victor, or about decisions made when she was ill, but whatever it is, it's enough to make Jill hesitate every time she considers crossing him. Victor believes Jill is under his thumb, but in truth, she's tangled in Kane's web. The woman who once commanded boardrooms with unshakable authority now finds herself torn between her heart and her reputation, unable to fully trust anyone. Lily, however, refuses to be manipulated. Her confrontation with Kane is fierce yet heartbreakingly quiet, a collision of two people who once loved each other deeply but can no longer even speak the same moral language. She challenges his claim of selfless loyalty to Chancellor, reminding him that true legacy isn't about control but integrity. Kane counters with the argument that Catherine herself saw something in him that others refused to see, that she believed in his leadership when no one else did. His words are persuasive, even to Jill, who watches the argument unfold like a mother forced to choose between two of her own children. Yet the more Kane defends his motives, the clearer it becomes that he isn't trying to protect Chancellor, he's trying to protect his ego. His vision of returning Chancellor to Catherine's values is less about honoring the past and more about rewriting it in his own image. By midweek, the tension becomes unbearable. Jill starts questioning her own instincts, replaying every conversation with Kane, every promise he's ever made. The memories are intoxicating, the days when he called her family, when she believed he could restore her faith in loyalty. But then she remembers the betrayals, the secrets, the manipulation, the hollow apologies. She wonders if she's truly defending him or just defending her own need to believe in redemption. That internal conflict becomes visible during her meeting with Lily, where the two women finally align, not as rivals but as survivors. Lily's strength reminds Jill of who she used to be, a woman who fought Catherine for decades but never lost her sense of purpose.